I always hold on to the view that Jesus was crucified, yet he survived. And I think that explains the Quran, chapter 4, verse 157, where it says they didn't kill him, the Jews didn't kill him, nor did they crucify him. It just looked like they did. So if we read, there's evidence to support that Jesus didn't die on the cross, according to the New Testament Gospels themselves. If we read the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verse 44, it says, Pontius Pilate was surprised to hear that Jesus had already died. Summoning the uh, centurion, he asked him if Jesus had already died. So according to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verse 44, the Gospel of Mark leaves readers questioning if Jesus actually died. So Pontius Pilate was surprised to hear Jesus already died. Crucifixion or death by crucifixion typically took days. So Jesus was only on the cross for, I believe, 6 hours, maybe 7 or 6 hours. I think 6 hours. Jesus was on the cross for only about 6 hours. So when Jesus was taken down, Pontius Pilate was surprised to hear that, you know, the rumors was that Jesus had died. So this verse in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verse 44, leaves readers questioning whether Jesus actually died or not. So, given the fact that death by crucifixion typically took days and Jesus was only on the cross for a few hours, this means that Jesus almost certainly survived the crucifixion. Uh, and furthermore, if you read the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, uh, you know, it, the Gospel of Mark doesn't have any resurrection narratives, because if you read the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, verses 9 to 20, those verses came later. They were added later on, according to New Testament manuscript scholars, Christian scholars, etc. So the Gospel of Mark ended with the women running away from the tomb, and then in the second century, the resurrection narrative of the Gospel of Mark, chapter 16, verses 9 to 20, were added in the second century, at least like 100 years after the Gospel of Mark was written or it was in circulation. So this Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, verse 44, Pontius Pilate was surprised to hear that Jesus already died. So this means that Jesus actually survived, because death by crucifixion typically took days and Jesus was only on the cross for a few hours. So it stands to reason that Pontius Pilate actually um, actually suspected that Jesus was alive, because Jesus was only on the cross for a short amount of time, while death by crucifixion took days and not hours. And Jesus was only on the cross for a few hours. That means it's certain that Jesus survived, even according to Pontius Pilate, who saw, who knew, uh, who knew how crucified victims would be killed. And since Jesus was on the cross for a few hours, it stands to reason that Pontius Pilate believed that Jesus survived the crucifixion. So there's evidence from the Gospel of Mark um, to reason that Jesus survived, and there was no resurrection narratives, according to the earliest Christians. And later on in the Gospel of Matthew, Luke, and John, those resurrection narratives were added and embellished and developed after the earliest gospel, the Gospel of Mark. Stay tuned, more videos coming up ahead.